Sean here in the shop again, making a mess, starting a new project, redoing my trailer. I just picked this up pretty cheap and basically want to restore it. It's a 2009 Felling trailer. It's a tilt bed. Basically I want to be able to use it for if I want to haul cars or, you know, whatever, lawnmower, you name it. Probably a little overkill for a lawnmower, but I was always looking for a trailer and figured I'd buy this one. Like I said, picked it up pretty cheap and want to kind of redo some things on it. For the most part, the guts are good on it, but you know, like the fenders and stuff need to be replaced. Some of the other stuff, I'm gonna go through the wiring, you name it. So as you can see, I got most of the wood, or all of the wood, taken off of it. Some of it's still in good shape. I may reuse it. I want to price out and see what it's going to cost to put all new stuff on here. But for the most part, we'll put the wood back on there when we're all said and done. There are a couple cross members. This one here I want to replace, and that one there are kind of rusty and thin, so I'll cut them out and just put a 3x3 tubing, kind of like what this one is, across there and weld those in place. But I'll kind of go over this trailer, like I said, is 2009 Felling, 10,000 pound trailer, and still, for the most part, the guts are pretty good shape. So some of the things I want to do to it is this trailer was originally a surge brake trailer. So it's still got the guts on it. If you don't know what surge brakes are, basically it's got a master cylinder, hydraulic master cylinder right here. You can see it's hiding in there. And then this hitch here actually moves in and out a little bit. When they're brand new and they're working correctly, they work pretty great actually. They work pretty simple. Basically when you're attached to the tow vehicle and you hit the brakes on the tow vehicle, obviously this is coming behind you and trying to slow down too. And as it does that, this compresses and applies like you were going to apply the pedal in a car. You're pushing on that master cylinder and it applies pressure to the brakes. So depending on how hard or soft you brake, it's going to apply the brakes the same way. So it's nice and consistent. But over time, what happens is these things get rusty and dirty and worn out and they just don't work. So I'm going to convert it to electric brakes. So I'll end up actually cutting this off right about here. I'm going to install, this has got kind of a 3 position, but there's 4 bolts here, or 4 holes in the coupler to adjust the hitch there. I'm going to put one that's got 6 on here, so a little bit more adjustability, but I'm going to cut it about here and then have, like I said, more adjustability there. I'm going to have to move the chains to the A-frame itself, and we'll get those welded on. And another thing I want to do is I'm going to take this trailer jack and I'm going to move it from here. For one, this crank would be nice to be on the outside, but I'm going to move it to this little cross member here. So I'll probably cut that plate off there and then just weld it on there, and then probably point the handle to the front here so it's a little bit easier to get at. Because eventually what I want to do is I want to put a box in the front here, toolbox, that's going to house whatever chains and straps and whatnot. I also want to put a winch on here. So somehow I'm going to have to mount a winch to this part of the trailer, not here. This is a stationary part. This is the part that's going to tip up. So obviously, unless I somehow would put a pulley on there, I have to attach it to here. So I don't know how I'm going to do that quite yet, but we'll figure that out in the time being here. So we'll get that somehow attached, but once that box is on, then I can store the battery in there, the cables and all that stuff in there too. So another thing I want to do is this one's got D-rings up front here, which I'd like to put some sort of D-ring or anchor point here and also here on each side. So one there and one there, so we'll weld in. I don't think I'm going to go with the D-rings like this, just kind of a little bar that some of them will have. It's just a little loop that you can hook onto. So we'll get those welded on, and you can see I got D-rings here, here, and then way in back. But I also want to put on the back of the fenders another attachment here and an anchor point there too. So just kind of add more adjustability to trying to get things anchored down. This trailer here has pretty bad rusted out fenders, so I want to replace those. These are, you know, welded on. I'm going to buy a set of new fenders and then make them removable. So some of the newer trailers, they'll have a little flange here attached to the fender, where it just bolts to this angle iron here up front. So that's what I'm going to do there. Somehow I haven't figured it out yet, but I want to somehow have it attached in the center here too, so the center isn't flopping around. We'll see if I do something on the inside, maybe here or there, but we'll figure that out. And maybe just having the attachment in the front and the back will be strong enough, but I just worry that the middle part of the fender is going to sit there and rub or vibrate. So we'll get that figured out. I don't know if that'll be too difficult, but we'll get the fenders both replaced. I have to pick up some of those. This one I'm going to go and take each wheel off. It's got decent tires on it. I want to take the rims off and then paint them white. So we'll get those all cleaned up. I do have to kind of straighten out these light boxes on each side. They've kind of been backed into a couple times. I think I can straighten them out, but if not, I'll just cut them off, and I don't think to buy that box is that expensive, so I can still get them from the manufacturer. As you can see, I've got a bunch of this metal back here cut out. You can see the steel diamond plate here. So this whole back open area here was all diamond plate, and then the wood started. Actually, the way the wood is, it slides in the front, and then it's kind of bolted all the way back. And at the very end here, this metal was over the top of the very rear of the wood. So you had to cut this piece out just to get the wood out, because you couldn't get it out up front. You'd have to almost cut the board in half to pull it out from one way or the other. So I didn't like that. I'll change that up. What I going to end up doing there is just coming to this point here and not actually overlapping the wood. I'll just bring the sheet metal or the diamond plate right up to here, and that way if I ever want to take the wood out, I can. Now, for the most part, the wood will be all screwed down, but on the back here, what I'll do is I'll just take a piece of angle iron, slide it in here, and then it'll go over the top of the wood on the end here, and then everything will be bolted down. So that should be all right. I do have to make, you can kind of see I got, these are just some diamond pieces here, or triangle pieces there was 4 of them welded in like this to support that diamond plate that covered here. They were fairly rusty and kind of thin in spots. They probably would have worked fine, but I figured, well, I got some metal here, I can just cut that up. That's kind of what that plate there is for. I think it's 3/16, I'll use a plasma torch and cut some out real quick. So I got 4 of them to weld in here. That shouldn't take too long. And then I gotta pick up some diamond plate, have that cut at the local metal shop. And as you can see, I already kind of cleaned a lot of this up. Took the grinder and the wire wheel to this, and actually put rust treatment on here already. While doing that, let's see, I'm just using the Permatex rust treatment. Looks like part number 81773. And once you get it kind of cleaned up and all the rust scale and everything off of it, as you can see, it's turned it black, so you know it's working then. If you don't see it turn black like that, then either you didn't prep it right or it's not rusty. So I'm kind of doing that as I go along here. So as I clean up, this whole thing is going to have to be wire wheeled and kind of rust proofed first. Now, once I get the fenders off, tires off kind of thing, I do plan on taking the axles out, cleaning them up, painting them. As you can kind of see, I got a bunch of the wiring laying there. Being I was torching back here, I took all the wiring out and I kind of moved it forward. This whole trailer is going to get rewired. I may reuse some of this stuff, but we'll see kind of what condition that's in once I kind of get the whole harness out. But most of this should be cleaned up pretty decently. Just take a wire wheel to it and clean all that up. As far as the suspension, maybe you can kind of see that here, but it's got leaf springs, the equalizer in the middle. The equalizer on each side will have to be replaced. It's worn in. Now the spring itself isn't necessarily broken or bad or anything, but where it rides on the equalizer and kind of where the hanger is, spring hanger on each end, it's just kind of wore into the top leaf spring. So I'll end up getting new springs for it, you know, and U-bolts all at the same time, and then equalizers. So a lot of that'll be new. Like I said, I'm putting electric brakes on here. So I have electric brakes. I'll take all that hydraulic stuff off of there. I don't know what the bearing condition is like, and the drums on here, the hub drum assembly. But what I'll end up doing, take the axles out, clean them up, and then start converting it to electric. Put all the electric brake assembly on there, and then I'll probably have to get new drums for it, because I'm sure these drums are wore in. So we'll get those replaced. I might be able to reuse the bearings in there. I don't know yet. I'll take that apart, but the shocks on here still work. I'll probably just clean those up on each side. And trying to think what else I plan on doing to this thing. One thing I'm going to do is like the lights here. There's a light that I took out here on the fender, and the light up in the corner here. I'm going to convert them to LED, the little 3/4 inch LED lights. But I'll have to kind of pop this light out, weld a plate in there so it's flush, and then I can put the light in there. And the one with this, I'm going to not even use this bracket here. So once I'm going to cut all this off, cut the fender off, and just leave this angle iron. I'll just drill a hole here on the end here, and I'll install a light there. In the rear, it's just going to be on that light bucket, that light box. We'll just, once those are straightened out, I'll reuse the same lights there. I'm not going to necessarily change them to the smaller lights, but otherwise, I'm trying to think what else I'm going to do to this thing. It's just going to be kind of a dusty mess in here. One other thing too is once all this conspicuity tape comes off and I'm all repainted, I'm going to put that on the sides here. So that'll be kind of one of the last things to do. But yeah, so once I kind of get to a point, what I plan on doing is getting this kind of welded in first, get those angle pieces, triangle pieces welded in, and then put the diamond plate over the top of that. And I'll probably get this thing up high in the air, get the axles out and stuff like that. And then I'm just gonna put the old paint booth over top of everything and just go to town with the wire wheel and clean all that up and hopefully put rust proof on it. And then I'll probably put like Pour 15 on it, paint it, all that stuff. So it's just a matter of kind of doing the work. It's nothing too difficult, but like I said, I'll have to pick up new fenders and kind of some other parts. So as we go along, I'm figuring, I don't know, it's roughly going to be maybe $1,000 I'll stick into this thing, and hopefully have a somewhat decent trailer yet for somewhat cheap. So, so stay tuned. All right, I got my supports welded in here now. That should all be good to go. I'm going to kind of clean up some of my mess I got down here. And then I should be able to get those 2 cross members cut out, and then we'll go get some steel so we can get this kind of buttoned up. All right, turns out that the local metal shop that I usually go to is closed till Monday, so I can't get the cross members that I want for these and that plate for the back. So I'm going to focus my attention on the hitch here. I'm going to get this pulled out. It's just a couple pins here that hold that whole thing in. Slide that out, get my chains off of there. Remove this master cylinder out of the way. Probably get some of the electrical wiring and stuff pulled out, but I'll get that cut off where I want to get it cut. I'll show you that, and then I'll also get this thing moved, but I think I'll start with just removing half this stuff here. All right, so here's the channel that I'm going to put on here. It's actually going to be flush with the bottom here, that front lip there, but the way I want to cut this, as you can see, if I center this kind of in here, there's a gap between there just because this piece here kind of rounds and curves around there. So my thought is, when I cut it back here, put this down, so when I cut it back here, it's actually going to be a little bit U-shaped or horseshoe shaped. I kind of figured it's going to be about 1/4 inch or so that I'm going to cut, basically leave at the bottom, or on the sides I should say, so 1/4 inch more on the sides than I do on the top. So the top and the bottom will be notched in a little bit, and then hopefully it'll kind kind of sit in like this, and then there's no gap. So it's basically about the thickness of what this plate is, as you can see. If you put it flush like that, then you got a big gap, and I don't want to have to try and weld that in or fill that in somehow, so we're going to try and notch that, and I think that'll work okay. So I just got to leave the sides about a 1/4 inch more, and it should work out. So I'll get that drawn on here, and we'll get this cut off. I got this bracket fully welded on now, so I want to move on to the jack here. First I want to get some of this wiring and the old brake line kind of pulled out of the way, so I'm not really damaging that. I mean, the brake line I don't care about, but in case I need to reuse some of that wiring, I want to kind of save it. And also get this jack pulled off of there, and then what I'll end up doing is getting that bracket off of there. Once I unbolt the jack, then I can make it a little bit more access to the bottom, because I'm going to try and cut the weld here, because I want to save this bracket and try and reuse it over here. So we'll try and get that cut off. It just looks like it's welded on top and then on bottom. And then what I'll have to do is try and get some of this cross member cleaned up. Just try and get some of that rust off of there first, before taking that bracket and welding it to here. One thing I will have to do is actually cut this jack off of this bracket too, that it's welded to, because I want to spin this handle to the front, because right now if I move it to here, the handle will be back here, and I don't know if that's going to be necessarily in the way of the box I want to eventually put here. Plus it'll be kind of here. I think it would be more access if it's on this side. You can just stand at the front and crank it this way. The only thing is, I don't know if it'll hit this. I can always modify this if I need to. Maybe put an angle here or something like that. So we'll see, but I think it's going to be high enough where it's not going to hit here. So it should be fine, should be able to crank it no problem without hitting your hand on here or anything else. But we'll get all that pulled out of the way, and we'll get that cut off here. I also need to get these welded on. These are for the safety chains. So I'm just going to get those welded up here somewhere. I'm not sure how low I should put them or up high. Few inches from the front, I suppose, but basically they can go on either side, something like that. I'll try and figure out exactly where to weld them up, maybe up just an inch or so, and weld them there, and then they hopefully should be okay. These are the anchors that I'm going to be welded on, that I picked up. I picked up 6 of them, so basically they're just going to be kind of like that. So we'll weld one there on each side, probably another one on the front of the fender here on each side, and then I'm not sure, I might go like this. I was thinking about going with a 45 or something there, but I might just tuck that all the way in the corner somehow. Maybe something like that, not quite sure. And I think those will work for a few extra tie downs there. Yeah, you can see all of them will get welded in. So we got that to do. This one, after cleaning up some of the rust, I'm probably going to cut this out and re-weld a plate in here, make a plate. All right, getting ready to weld on this plate here. You can kind of see I have some primer put on here. This is weld through primer. That's going to be the bottom side. But I got kind of the spots I'm going to be tacking this on. I'm not going to fully weld it all the way around. You don't necessarily have to. But a lot of times when you do a flat plate like that and you weld the whole seam, it wants to warp on you because you put so much heat into it. So to stitch weld it like this is, in my opinion, a little bit better. And that's kind of the way it was on there. So that's why I'm going to put it back on. I'm going to weld it on, stitch weld it on the top, and I'm also going to stitch weld it from underneath. So you know, in areas like here, it's going to be welded, and also on this edge here too. And then I'll weld the kind of these supports in here too to it, so we don't have any flexing. So we'll get that laid on there, kind of center it up, and start tacking it together. We'll clamp it down nice and tight, and get that fully welded on there. All right, a little update on the trailer. You can see I got the plate welded on here. I also have some Pour 15 put on here, about 2 coats. After I got done welding this thing, before I put the paint on, I actually did put some seam sealer underneath and around the outside here. And then I put my Pour 15 coats on there. 2 right now, probably, I don't know if I'm gonna put 1 more or if I'm just gonna top coat it, but I kind of did this sides here, the light boxes. This one I had to put a little patch in here because it was kind of rusty through, so I just welded in that. Kind of straightened those out from before, so those are both welded up, or the one is welded up, and then this one's painted. So it's, for the most part, good back here, except for putting more paint on it once we get to that point. I got my hooks all welded in, my anchor points. See, I got the 3 on each side, one over there, one right there. So those are nice and mounted. I do believe I showed that I got the 2 cross members welded in here earlier. I did, being I had a little leftover paint when I was painting that, I just kind of filled in, did some painting up here after cleaning up some rust up front here, and after kind of redoing some of these, the jack and some of the other stuff. So I don't remember if I showed, I got my chain holders here, or anchors. I got those welded on both sides and just put a little Pour 15 on there for now. So up front here should be pretty good. I will have to wire wheel some of that rust off and stuff once I get to that point, which we're getting pretty close to. You can see I got one of the fenders off. I also have, as you can see, the axles are gone. I took the axles and springs and all that stuff out. You can see some of the old parts over here. There's half the one fender, or the full fender, but it's cut in half. The springs were pretty decent, but you can kind of see here how wore they are on the edges and stuff. And then the eyelets are kind of wore out too, but here's the equalizer. The equalizer should have, right in here, you can kind of see something's missing in there. Let's see if I can get the light in there. There should be a little kind of a triangle shaped piece where the spring rides on. A lot of times after age they just fall out or wear off and they're gone. So I got new equalizers coming for that. Here's the brakes too that are off the axle. Like I said, this was a surge brake trailer. So it's got a hydraulic slave cylinder here on each one versus an electric magnet that's on most of these, or for electric brakes. The bolt pattern though is the same whether you have electric or hydraulic on these size axles. So different axles might be different, but this one, the bolt pattern is the same, so it's an easy swap over. The width and everything is the same. I'll kind of show you that too. I got the axle sitting over here. I went and cleaned up the rust and stuff on these, put some rust treatment on here. And then right now I got 1 coat of Pour 15 on here, but the axles look good yet. I think this one must have been replaced at some point in the trailer's life because it's got the spindle is way cleaner. There's nothing wrong with this one, but you can just tell it's a newer spindle on both sides. So I think that one was replaced. But I'll probably put another coat of Pour 15 on there and paint them. Those should be ready to go back in. I got springs and stuff coming, like I said. The new brakes, which are in those boxes there, will bolt right up. One thing I was kind of lucky about, I wasn't sure if I was going to have to replace the drum hub assembly. Everything here looks pretty good. I mean, the outside is kind of rusty on them, but if you flip them over, being those brakes weren't working, I mean, it's kind of rusty on the inside, but there's no lip here, there's nothing. I mean, this drum looks pretty good yet, so I'm going to reuse them. Save me a few $100 just replacing those. And as far as I could tell, all the bearings and everything we're still good in all the hubs. You know, I might have to put new seals on here, but those are fairly cheap. So, but when we get to that, we'll get those bearings all cleaned up and reassembled. But kind of lucked out there that the brakes weren't working, so they didn't wear into the drums at all. So I'll reuse those. I don't know if I'm going to end up painting them, but it's coming along. My next step here is once I get this, once I get the other fender kind of cut off of here, I'm going to take this whole thing kind of get, there's a bunch of little studs that they had welded on here for running wiring and stuff like that. I'm going to take all that off because I'm going to redo that, put different attachment points for the wiring and stuff. So, but we'll get this fender cut off of here, and you can kind of see I got a little bit left over on that side. Should go over this side here. I'm going to try and save, this was just a support for the fender here. I'm going to try and save that because I want to make this, like I said, removable fender, but I want to make it so this part is welded to the fender, and then down here I'll be able to anchor that or put a pin through this somehow and remove the whole fender and everything. But I want to have that support here. It's just the fender is going to last that much longer, but I do have to clean up some of this. And here you can kind of see there's a little stud right here. Bunch of that stuff I want to get kind of knocked off there. Probably take an air hammer to it and get that off. But most of the spring hangers, equalizer hanger and stuff are in good shape. Usually these holes are kind of wallered out, but they're pretty good shape for some reason. And so it should go back together pretty good. But we'll get a lot of that kind of knocked off, and then what I'll do is we'll get the paint booth pulled over the top of this thing. And what I'm not looking forward to is going to town on this with a wire wheel. That and a needle scaler. I think I showed my needle scaler before. That works pretty good on a lot of this rust or something. Even an air hammer works pretty good taking care of that rust and knocking that off. But I want to wire wheel as much as I can, and it's just going to be so dusty and everything. I'm going to have to suit up for that one because it's going to be a mess. But we'll get it all wire wheeled, and then we can actually start putting some rust treatment on here, and then put some Pour 15 on here, and then we'll put a top coat. I don't know what I'm going to do with top coat, if I'm just going to rattle can it or find some other top coat to put on it. The thing with Pour 15, the rust treatment part of it anyway, is if you put that on here, it doesn't hold up to UV light over time, so it starts to degrade. So you want to put some sort of top coat on it to make it really last and hold up. So underneath, you don't necessarily have to paint it because it's not going to see the sun, but it's just a good idea too. So, but yeah, we'll get this thing all cleaned up, and we'll get the paint booth pulled over it and start making a mess, I guess. All right, it's time to get started on getting the rust off this thing. I'm going to start with the needle scaler. I'm not really looking forward to this. It's going to be freaking hot and dusty. I'm going to get suited up, get a paint suit on, the whole 9 yards, mask, shield, all that stuff, because I'm going to be underneath this thing. So we'll get started on it. Use the needle scaler first, and then once we're done with that, knocking off all the big rust stuff, then I'll go after it with the wire wheel. All right, not gonna sugarcoat it. This sucks. What a mess. I can kind of show you here. I got most of it is all wire wheeled up. I do have to do a little bit of the A-frame up front, the undercarriage basically, and then we should be good. I've already kind of put rust treatment on this back half because I wanted to be able to tip it down, so I wanted to get kind of underneath, so I just went and put all the rust treatment on there. It's real dusty now, but you can kind of see it's black here and not up on there. So got to finish that up, put the rust treatment on, and then we should be able to put Pour 15 and kind of paint it from there. But yeah, it's a big pain. Sweating my ass off. It's like 90 degrees outside, 70% humidity, and it's just a mess. My suit is sticking to me, so kind of doing a little at a time here, a couple hours, and getting her done. So I'm sure I could have had someone, you know, the right way to do this is just have someone sandblast it for me and then paint it, and I could kind of do the rest, but can't afford that, so I'm just doing it the hard way. All right, finally got all the rust removed as best I could. I'm all done wire wheeling this thing, breaking up the rust and everything, so I've got it mostly blown off. It was so dusty and everything. I don't know, there's still some on here. What I want to do is take a damp cloth and wipe this whole thing down before I finish putting the rust treatment on here, and then I can actually start putting Pour 15 on it all. You know, I've got the back done already, but I pretty much from the very back all the way to the front, I got to put Pour 15 on and then put a coat of paint on that. So I haven't decided exactly what paint I'm going to be using there, but should be able to kind of wipe all this down and put the rust treatment on there. And then hopefully once we get all the painting done, then we can get the axles put in and start going on that. So, all right, so after all that cleaning, welding, cutting, all that good stuff, trying to get all the rust and everything off this trailer, we jumped to today, and we have a pretty much mostly painted trailer here. I have basically 2 or 3 coats of Pour 15 on everything, and I have about 2 or 3 coats of a top coat. Basically, for the most part, I used a oil-based black gloss or high gloss black paint. I just happened to have it in the cabinet, so figured I might as well use it up. But like I said, basically got all that coated. Hopefully it lasts, but we got that coated. It took me a couple of weeks, I guess, just to kind of get everything painted, because I had to get, you know, the front of it up in the air so I could paint underneath down here, and let it dry, and then put it back down and paint the rest of it. So it took some time. Basically just kept, you know, when I had a few hours of time, I'd come out here and paint a bunch, but I think it turned out pretty good. You still kind of see where some of the rust was and stuff like that, but for the most part, that's no big deal to me. So, but we got that far. That was a big undertaking. Certain spots underneath, I do have truck bed lining undercoat, or not really undercoat, but bed lining, spray on bed lining. I just was using the DuPont stuff. I kind of, on the top side, the reason I used the oil-based stuff is I didn't want a rough texture to it like the bed liner has, because especially on the sides here, I want to put conspicuity tape on along the sides, so pretty much all the way along here, and then you'll have the fender kind of in the way, and then behind the fender you'll have the tape. So for that to stick, you want it somewhat smooth texture there. That bed liner doesn't always stick to it, so I tried to use a lot of that bed liner stuff kind of underneath some of the cross members and stuff, mostly back here. It just holds, the stuff, that DuPont stuff holds up. I've had good luck with it, I should say. So kind of use that in spots, and it just depends on what texture you're going after. No, it looks pretty good to me, I guess. So right now I do have the latches off the front that hold it down. I'm going to paint those red, actually. I decided to use up some of my red caliper paint that I used on my Mustang. So I had some left over. Hopefully it's enough to cover both of those, but also being red, that hopefully you can notice that if the latch isn't hooked up in front. So it's a little bit of a reminder, but some of the things I'm gonna do, well, yeah, here's the latches here. So I'm gonna actually sandblast them and then we'll paint them red. I do have the axles ready. I think I mentioned those, but I'm working on my wheels. I actually used silver Pour 15 on the rims, and then I'm using their white top coat. So I got a couple more coats to put on the rims there. Those are turning out okay so far. But kind of once I get some of that painting done and wrapped up, I should be able to put my suspension back in. So I got to put the equalizer hanging here. Then I can put the leaf springs and axles in. And once I get the axles put in here, I'm going to put the tires on there. I should be able to tell where my fenders are going to sit. The fenders that I bought, I think what happened is they're not the exact ones that came off of it. They're very, very close. The biggest thing is that they're not as tall this way. So I have to double check. I may have to, I think I have enough tire clearance because these are going to be lower, which is fine with me, but I may have to add a little panel along the whole bottom here and fill that in somehow if I have to raise them up. And the other thing is, being that they sit lower, that angle here doesn't come right to here. Being they sit lower, it's going to be down a little bit, so it actually comes here versus here. So I might have to put a little plate to fill that in, which is okay, because I'm going to have it removable anyway, so I got to figure out how I'm going to be able to remove the fender off of there. But I want that fender to come and sit right here on this edge where it was before, and then we'll figure out how we're going to actually attach it. So that'll be kind of the next thing. We'll get those axles installed. That should go fairly quick, just a matter of bolting everything up. And once that's in, one thing I'll kind of show what I'm going to do here, but the bolt that goes in here, a lot of times on these slipper springs, the hanger bolts there and the equalizer bolt here, over time, because the weights, you know, all the weight is down, but it's pushing up on the suspension bolt, it wears this hole bigger, and there too. I've never tried it before. A lot of times what I'll do is I'll fill this in with weld to make that back to the original size. But what I'm going to actually try to do, this one's fairly decent. So I'm going to just actually take the bolt and kind of put pressure on it up, and then I'm going to tack weld it around there. Enough where you can cut it out if you have to and remove it, but I'm going to tack weld it here, and then when I actually have the nut tight on the other side, then I'll tack weld that nut too in spots so you can at least cut it out. But that way the bolt won't move, and the only wear point is on the pivot itself. And I don't know if I'll try it with those. I think those bolts are okay, but I'm actually kind of surprised that it's not more wear in there. Usually, being it's got that square peg on there, that a lot of times when you go to loosen or tighten it, it just spins in that hole. So I'm actually impressed that it's not wore out more, but it's coming along. All right, got both axles in. Suspension is fully in. Next, we're going to get the hub ends on there, basically the brake assembly, the hub drum assembly. I got to kind of go through the bearings, make sure they're greased and cleaned up. Once those are on, we can kind of mount the tires then, and then we can figure out where our fenders are going to go. And hopefully from there, it's just a matter of putting the boards on and kind of wiring it up, and should be good to go. All right, I got the hubs all mounted, the drums all mounted, the bearings all cleaned up, packed together, put a little paint on them just to make them look a little nicer. I got the wheels mounted so I can tell where my fender is going to be going. Basically the next step is going to be mocking these fenders up, which you can see I do this side already. I kind of needed the tires on just so I can tell if they're centered or not. I basically took my square here, kind of went to the corners, and they almost line up with the outside of each rim going straight down. You know, basically just like that. Try to get centered as most possible, because these fenders are a little bit shorter than the ones that came off of it, which are going to be fine. So I'm going to be, that's where my where I'm going to be putting the pins or the quick release for the fenders on there, and then I'm going to put something in the middle. I do plan on The old ones had a brace right here, diagonal brace going down. It was welded to the frame, and all the fender was welded to there. Being they got to be removable, it's just going to go to the edge of the new fender here. So that shouldn't be too hard just to weld something in there. But trying to get this mocked up, trying to figure out how I'm going to make it accessible to remove and put back on. A lot of newer trailers, they just have a flat plate right here and then it's bolted on with like 3 bolts or something. That would probably be the quickest and easiest, just to do that. Just put, 6 bolts on each fender, but you're not always going to have a wrench handy if you need to take it. I suppose being I'm going to have a box in front if I just had tools in there or something, but I'm trying to make it so you don't need tools to take the fender off. So that's why I'm kind of going with this setup here, where I'm going to be using, it's just a piece of pipe and some round bar in there that fit nice. What I'll do is probably weld just in there like that. And then what I'll do is the pipe will be welded. I'll cut the pipe, whatever length I go here, I'll cut the pipe into 3 pieces. So either 2 pieces will be on this side and 1 on that side, or vice versa, or 2 pieces on here and 1 piece on here. So it'll all make up 1 pipe, but it'll just be cut. So all you have to do is basically pull the pin and then it comes out of there. And so I gotta get that kind of figured out. It's almost to the point where I can kind of take the back and flip it up if I wanted to, but what I plan on doing is kind of doing that in a way where I'll get the front one there. The back one will be the same thing. I'll just have a pin to pull out and it'll come straight up, but I want to make this just clear this piece here so I can swing it up. So I'm trying to get it as far forward so it clears here, so I can kind of swing past there. Once I pull the pin, swing it past. This would have to be, somehow I'm going to make something here that is, I don't know, a detachable or quick release kind of thing. I haven't 100% decided on how I'm going to do that, because if I have it swing up a little bit, if I pull the back pin first and then release this, swing it up, whatever, if I put a pin here or a plate here or whatever I'm making here, it somewhat has to swing this way. So I don't want to make something that's real loose and going to bang around. I want a nice tight fitting. So I'll probably do this last. I'll get the front and the rears mounted up. I believe I have enough clearance. These are kind of at full droop right now. But if I measure the clearance down here between the top of the axle and the bottom of the frame, is about the same amount here. The only issue there is, there's about that inch here where the tire can go up underneath here, but if you look, I don't know if this camera shows it, but tires stick out just a little bit. If these were to come all the way up, this outer edge of the tire might just catch this lip. So either I can kind of bend this out if I have issues, this outer lip, or cut some of it away. I don't think I'll ever get that. I'd be probably a loaded trailer, real heavy or something, or just a really awkward position that I would get into that situation. But I think I have plenty of clearance even though this fender sits lower. What I'm doing is, so the bottom of the fender here, I'm just putting it right at the top of the frame rail, just so you can't see daylight necessarily through there. And my other idea here is, being they stick out just a little bit, right now I have the fender basically touching the frame. I don't know if I'm going to have a little bit of play where it's going to rattle. So I'm thinking I'm going to just space this out just a hair, maybe 1/8 of an inch or 1/16 of an inch, just so it doesn't rattle and rust in that area from vibrating. And then also that kind of moves that out so the tire sits more inside of the fender versus just on that edge right there. So just trying to mock this up. I think my next step here is I'm actually going to start take a square and start putting lines on here kind of down into where I'm going to be welding that spot, just so I can kind of tell if I'm, when I put that pipe on here, if I'm square to here, just so I can eyeball it a little bit. I don't know 100% how much this front bracket and the rear bracket, how square they are to the frame, if they're straight or whatever. They look pretty straight, but what I'm noticing is this fender is not straight at all. I was gonna go off of the frame and just make sure I'm square this way, but when this is square, this has kind of a tilt to the bottom, and to me that looks goofy when you're standing in the back. I'd almost rather have more of a level top, and this is, you know, pointed this way or that way, than having it slanted or something like that. I don't know, it just looks weird, but you can put a straight edge on here and you can see this outer edge just kind of drops off. So it's not square, and even to put a level on here, it's a little high on this end, and then in the middle it's square, and then that end it's kind of twisted. So I'm sure when they bent this and welded it at the factory, they weren't too worried about it being perfect. And it doesn't necessarily have to be, it's just me being picky, I guess. But it'd be nice if it was dead nuts and square so you can kind of measure off of it. But it shouldn't be too bad to get this welded, but it's gonna have to just kind of tack it in place first, test it, make sure everything's fitting right, and then fully weld it. And then I can make that center bracket there, whatever I'm gonna do there. And then we should be able to paint it and then go to the other side over there. So I'll have to do it all over on the other side. But once that's all done, I believe I should be able to put the wood on it. I mean, I could do that now, I guess. I don't think there's anything else that's really gonna be in the way for me. I do have to clean up those shocks that go in for the tilt. That's not a big deal. I don't necessarily need them, but we'll clean them up and just put them back on there in good shape yet. I do have to mount the hitch on there yet. And then basically, I gotta put safety chains on it. I gotta buy some chain for that. But basically once that's done, then it's just a matter of wiring it up. And the trailer would be ready. I do wanna, I'll probably do a little bit later, but I do wanna put a winch up front here. I'll figure something out, some sort of bracket, once the wood is on, that it's kind of sitting right here, just behind this front cross member, but I'll bolt it to here somehow, so it's removable. And then I do have to mount a tongue toolbox up here that I'm gonna buy. I just haven't purchased that yet. So I'll probably buy that toolbox here, get that ordered anyway pretty soon. But yeah, we'll figure out what we're doing here, get those lines drawn on here, and then we can kind of start mocking it right in the position I want, and I can kind of tack it in place. So, all right, got this fender mounted up here, or mocked up basically. You can see I got my pin in here. So I got my 3 pieces. This center piece is welded to the bracket here. The other 2 are welded to the fender itself. That just pulls out. There's a little bit of tension on there right now, but and then in the back I had to make a little plate that kind of bent and came over, and then I have the pin on the back side of this bracket. Basically the outer 2 are welded to the bracket, and then this center piece is welded to the fender here. There's a little bit, I got to free this one up a little bit better. It's a little tight right here, it warped when I finished welding it. And then this one actually pulls out pretty good once we get the tension off of it. It's kind of, the front is kind of twisted one way and the rear is twisted the other way. I haven't done anything here yet in the center. I don't know if I'm actually gonna. It's solid. I don't really have any movement. So I can always add something there in the future if I want to. But right now I think it's pretty solid. One thing too with trailers, once you get them loaded, they can kind of bow like this, or bow like this a little bit, depending on how the load is. A lot of times you'll see the fenders on the back side, they'll start to warp a little bit. That's because if they're welded on in the front and the back and they can't flex, you'll get that bowing kind of in the center between the wheels, right here. Right now this is rubbing a little bit right in the center. I made a little bit of a gap there and a little bit of a gap there on that end, just so if there is vibration, but this is the only spot that's actually kind of touching. I'm not sure if I'm going to leave it like that or try and get that spaced out, but with this bracket welded in here and everything, it's pretty solid and it's not going anywhere, especially with that tension I have on the fender itself. So I'll kind of show you real quick here. Set the camera down. and then you'll be able to see. So if I get this pin out, and off it comes. So fender's kind of heavy, being a steel and everything, pretty heavy gauge steel too. So it's a little heavy that way, but you know, if you're with someone, 2 people, it's not that hard. But I'm gonna end up having to paint everything here. I was thinking about putting a kind of a, why can't I see this here? A plate maybe on the back side here. If it starts to crack on these 2 spots. But right now it seems pretty solid, being I'm not getting any movement out of that, out of the fender itself. So, and I can always take it off and weld something on there again. So I think we're done with this side fender. We can set this one aside, go and set that off to the side, start getting that painted, and basically do everything on that side now. So I just decided to put a handle on the end of the pin. That way you got something to grab onto. You can kind of rotate it in there if it's a little bit tight. On this one here, I'm going to put just a little tab that sticks out. So when I'm done with it, push it in, and it'll be flush like that. So you can't, it kind of hides it, and it's just sitting on there. And then with the pin on the other side, or the cotter pin on that end, it's not going to come out. What you can do, I guess, which I maybe should have thought of to begin with, but this pipe here, you could extend it out just a little bit and then notch it. So once you push it in, this handle will actually slide into that notched out area. So the pipe would actually come out, you know, to the outside here, and then it's not going to rotate on you once you have the pin on that side. But on this one, well, on the whole trailer, I want to be able to, you know, once it's all the way in, I want to be able to rotate it instead of having to pull it out of that notch first and then rotate it, just in case it gets a little rusty or something over time. I'm just going to put some grease in here to keep that from seizing in there, but I think that'll look okay. On this end, I'm not going to really have a little tab or anything here. I'm just going to kind of make it go the length of the, or go with kind of parallel to the fender here. So it kind of hides it, but it'll be just pushed in, and the fender will keep it from rotating a little bit. I can rotate it up, but it won't go down. So it's just going to be sitting on there. You know, and I'll end up doing that on both sides. So, but I think that's pretty good. All right, we're making progress. I got the paint on the fenders. I got 2 coats of Pour 15, and then I'm currently letting the first coat of just spray paint cure right now. I'll probably put a second coat on that. Then those should be ready to go. So hopefully by tomorrow I can throw those on. Also went and bought a toolbox for the front up on the tongue here. So I just took some angle iron, made a couple brackets. You can see it kind of notched it out on the ends. So it's actually bolted, and then it's also sitting in there. So if that bolt ever falls out for some reason, that bracket isn't necessarily going to fall out. So once we get that dry, right now I got some Pour 15 going on there. So I'm going to put a couple coats of that, paint it like I'm doing the rest of this. And then the box will actually be bolted, just 4 bolts, just to kind of secure it. So got this one off of Amazon. It's not too bad. So it's got some hellacious shocks on it. That goddamn door will hit you in the face. But no, that'll work good for putting straps and everything in there. Eventually the battery will probably sit in there for the winch. Probably going to order a winch soon. I don't know if I'll get that on in this video, but that'll be mounted there. But so got all that going on. Just kind of waiting for paint to dry. So in the meantime, I'm going to start working on lights. I can at least start installing the bulbs and stuff. I'm going to be reusing some of the wiring. Up front here I do have to, well, yeah, a couple spots. I got to drill a hole here and also here where the old light was that had a big 2.5 round. I'm going to put a 3/4 there and then a 3/4 on that bracket there too. So I can kind of start mounting them up, which shouldn't take too long, and then start wiring all of this. The old wiring harness in the trailer had a bunch of little studs sticking out off the frame where a lot of the hose clamps, not hose clamps, but tie downs basically were, strap clamps. And I cut a lot of them off. I'm actually going to be going to these. So just a hole in the middle. I had these for when I built the Ranger, or I had bought these when I built the Ranger. So just drill a hole, put a bolt through there, and then I'll be able to clamp or zip tie the harness to that. And that'll be way easier than those strap or frame straps, you know, to go along, kind of along that side. That's where most of the wiring will be going. And then also across here, which will just be inside of the tube in the back here. One thing about the tilt bed, I'm going to have to run the wiring from the front of the tongue all the way along the kind of the bottom, right to the pivot point here, come up and then go forward again to those corners, you know, for the fender over here and then also that other one over here. Obviously, if I just ran the wiring straight up to that spot and then you go to tip up the trailer, the wiring is going to be too short and snap or cut, you know, rip. So little extra wiring going on there, but that's just how it was. So just a matter of kind of running all that stuff, hooking the brakes up now that they're electric. Shouldn't take too long, but we'll start installing white lights here, and I'm thinking once I get the wiring done, at least back here I can throw the wood on, and man, we're going to be that much closer to being done. On a project like this, it can be daunting that it's just a lot of work to do and a lot of rust to clean up and paint and all this stuff that I'm doing to this trailer. So the way I do it anyway, you know, you can do it however you want, but I break it up into kind of little steps or little, what do you want to call it, little goals. You know, let's get this part done and this part done, and that way it doesn't seem so daunting because you can kind of cross it off the list. And you know, it maybe only takes an hour or two each day or something like that, or a week, and you can keep going instead of just one big project in your head, you know. So but yeah, any chance I get, I just come out here and work for a couple hours and it's just about done. So been making progress with the electrical wiring so far. I have the rear lights hooked up. I just reused the old harness. That was still in good shape. It wasn't brittle or cracked up or anything like that. I replaced all these lights just so they're kind of matched. The old ones worked, but I wanted to make sure that they kind of looked uniform, I guess. But so all that's good. It's just run across this back channel here, and you can see the old harness kind of sticking out right there. You can kind of see I got wired up to about there is where the harness was cut. I think it reaches up to about the pivot point where everything else was. So I got to put that together. I got the license plate light on. That's going to be mounted back here, or is mounted underneath here. So that's all wired up. And then once I get the license plate put on there, I'm kind of working from both ends, trying to work towards the middle here because I want to run all the lights and stuff to this junction box. So I went and mounted the connector or the trailer cord up front. I got the breakaway switch mounted up here and the breakaway battery mounted, and then I kind of got it back, and that's kind of where the junction box is of everything. And there's about 3 different ways that these trailers get wired up as far as coloring on the wiring. So on a 7-way plug, you have a traditional way, and then you also have an RV standard, they call it, and then kind of the 3rd way is like heavy duty truck semis. They wire it 1 way too, but they're not the flat pins. They're more of a round pin versus the flat. I kind of come from a background of semis, so I have some of that in my mind, but I also have the RV standard, I think, is the one that I come across a lot. So I kind of mix and match how I like to wire it up. The ground, I'll show a picture of it here, the 3 different styles. But the ground and the positive for charging the battery and maybe running accessories usually is in the same spot, except for like on semis, but I think that's usually the center pin. But yeah, they're all kind of different, so just pay attention to how the trailer is wired. You might have to actually test and see if you're doing any of this wiring. I'm not going to get into too much of the wiring. I'll show some of it. But if you have any questions, you can let me know. Yeah, it's just kind of make sure you know what you're getting into when you wire it. Sometimes you have to take the plug apart here and just check resistance between there and whatever wire you're dealing with. This one is all molded, so I couldn't do that, but you can test the end here. And then I'm basically testing at the junction block here where it comes out. All these are colored too, but you can kind of mix and match to whatever color you need. So don't always trust that the colors are correct. So make sure you double check that stuff if you're doing any of this trailer wiring, but it's coming along. Shouldn't take a whole lot longer, I guess. I got the two front lights mounted up on each corner. I just got to wire them in. I've kind of got some, I don't know if you can see them, I got little brackets mounted here along the bottom. So I just got to run the wires over, and I got to run them into that junction box there. And then I have to install these wires, or these lights. You'll have to run the wires back down to the pivot point and then back up to this box. And let's see, I'll have to hook up all the brakes, which all those will just basically be wired together and then run into that junction box too. If you don't know how this brake system works on electric trailers, basically you have your brake controller in the vehicle, which you can operate manually a lot of times, or just when you step on the brake pedal. You can, it'll automatically do it when you step on the brake pedal. But as far as like the breakaway battery and the breakaway switch, being that these things don't have parking brakes on them, this more or less is your parking brake. And if your chains or your hitch ever comes loose and the trailer comes loose, this is supposed to be hooked to your vehicle somewhere. Don't hook this to your chains, because if the chain falls off, this is going to do you no good. So hook this somewhere else to the vehicle, whether it's another part of the hitch or another part of the vehicle, just in case, even the hitch could fall off and the whole trailer comes off, and if that's hooked to the hitch, it's not going to do any good. So that is therefore, so if the trailer breaks away, this will pull this pin, and the power in the battery will apply the brakes. It's supposed to be able to apply the brakes for at least 15 minutes, because we don't want this thing flying off into the ditch or into oncoming traffic and kill somebody. So it's very important that that's working. I tend to like the battery style that has a test on it. A lot of times it tells you if it's need of a charge, or if it is charging, and if you test it, it should light up green. It tells you that the battery is good. So some of these batteries do not have any of this, so you don't know if the battery is good unless you pull all that apart and actually test it. So that's why I kind of like these systems, because it's a quick, easy check. Anytime that you're plugged in, you should see the charging light come on, so you know that battery is always being charged. Yeah, basically once that is disconnected or the trailer breaks away, that should apply the brakes, and the trailer should come to a stop safely and hopefully not kill anybody. But one thing too is anytime you're pulling a trailer like this, if you want to test that, always disconnect your trailer plug if you're just testing it, and then pull the pin out, because if you pull the pin and this is still hooked up, you can get backfeed or power back feeding through the vehicle, and you could hurt some stuff, electrical equipment in there. So anytime you want to test to see if that works, I leave it hooked up, I'll disconnect this, and then I'll pull the pin on it, and then I'll just try and drive ahead a little bit. It should lock up all 4 brakes, and you shouldn't be able to go anywhere. It should stop that. So, and then just plug it back in, and then you can hook up your trailer cord. So just a quick little test, and also just test the battery just to make sure that's working. So it's coming along. Like I said, just a few more lights to hook up and run some wires, get the brakes hooked up. I also want to put some conspicuity tape on it along the sides, kind of along here up to the fender, and then from here up to there. So I don't think I'm going to put any on the tongue or anything, just kind of back there, because you want some reflectors on there. You don't have to have full reflectors, but it's good to have reflectors at least in the corners, just in case the lights aren't on. So conspicuity tape kind of helps with all that. Lights up the whole side of the trailer. All right, I'm nearing the end of this build here, this restoration of this trailer. You can see I got it back on the ground now. I have ground clearance with the new fenders. it should work. I have some mud flaps I got to mount yet on the back here. I got to put my wood on, which I'm going to do next here. Once I get the mud flaps on, I got to mount the license plate too, but I'm going to put the wood back on. Basically everything up front here is done. I do have to mount the hitch and the chains, but I want to hook up to it or back up to it with the vehicle, so I can adjust that hitch the right height and then adjust the chains to the right length. That should be pretty quick and easy. But the wood, I'm going to plan on reusing the old stuff as much as possible. There's going to be one or two boards I'm not going to be able to use because they're busted, but they're in decent shape yet, and it's going to save me a little bit of money. And also trying to find straight boards at you know, Home Depot or Lowe's or whatever is always a pain in the ass. So we'll get the wood on next here, and for the most part we're going to be done with this thing, and I can pull this out of there, and then maybe I can get started on that thing. So that's been kind of an eyesore for a while now, a few months, but I want to look into that engine and see what the hell's going on with it. So all right, let's keep going and get this wood on. So I decided to show you how I mounted the winch on the trailer. This is it's made by Weaver, I think that's how it's pronounced, 18,000 pound. I don't know if it's necessarily good or bad, but I figured I'd try it. Anyway, I bought this universal winch plate that you can use for mounting on either the front of a Jeep or a truck or something like that, or a frame rail. It seems to work good. But basically I have a couple U-bolts that go underneath to the front cross member that runs right here. So it goes up underneath. I have 3 bolts that hold it to the front here. So any weight that's pulling it that way, there's some support there. And then the winch itself is bolted down to the plate. So that should work good there. I also wanted to kind of show you how I have the battery cables. I don't have a battery yet for it. That'll go in here. There's the battery cables. So basically, I can't leave it, I don't want to leave it hooked up all the time to the battery when it's just sitting outside. And also you have to have long enough cables on it so when it's tilted up, there's enough length there. So basically what I did is put one of these big connectors on there. You see them on forklifts and other maybe scissor lifts, stuff like that, but these big battery connectors. And that way I just kind of put a short end here so I can tuck that underneath there. I got a cover that I have on order for it right now, waiting for that to show up, but that'll be covered up, sitting outside. And then the other end you just plug in. It's got eyelets for the battery there, so I have to get a studded battery. And then they're long enough so when this thing is tipped up in the air, the battery would sit right there. And then I just plug it in and it operates just fine. So waiting for that to show up. One thing too, that this winch is fairly heavy. I don't know the actual weight on it, but it's a good 80, 100 pounds probably. And now that all that weight is sitting up front here, I might have to add some weight to the back of the trailer, because when it's tipped back, before it would actually stay down. Now I kind of have to put my foot on it just to hold it down. So as you're rolling something up, you gotta hold that down just because of the weight of the winch up there. So I don't know if I'll maybe just bolt something underneath, some extra weight or something like that, or just live with it, because it's not terrible, but it's enough where it's maybe a pain in the ass. Maybe comes up 3-4 inches or something off the back. So you probably could drive up to it and it would go down, but yeah, just be aware of it. There's not really any other spot to really mount this thing. One thing I will run into too is whatever you're putting on here, obviously if it's something low and long, you know, like if it's a front bumper of a car, it can only come up to the winch. You can't necessarily roll the front tires all the way up here and have that overhang because the winch would hit it. So anything tall might clear that, like a truck or something. You could, you know, roll up and the bumper, bottom of the bumper would clear that. But so that could be an issue, but most of the cars that I have would fit on here. They might hang out over the end a little bit, but as far as the wheelbase, they'll fit on here from tires from one end to the other. So other than that, this thing is basically done. I got the chains on. They're all set up. I got the winch, or the hitch, sorry, mounted on there in a spot where I think it'll work. So yeah, I'm getting ready to pull this thing out of here once my cover shows up. And what else was, oh, I ordered some tire covers when it's sitting outside. But otherwise she is ready to use. So, all right, trailer is done. Getting ready to put this thing outside, and just another long project that lasted way longer than I wanted it to, but it's done now. Just gotta put the cover on the winch and set it outside, and we'll get to the next project here. And yeah, I think it turned out okay. And I appreciate you guys watching. I know this stuff isn't necessarily groundbreaking material here, but I don't know, maybe I would have given you some ideas on how to do this on your trailer or something, but yeah, you can definitely find some used equipment and maybe get it for cheap and clean it up. And next thing you know, you got a nice trailer. So, till next time, guys, we'll see you later.